I never thought I'd be that guy, the one who finds out his wife's been cheating on him, especially not in such a brutal gut-punch kind of way. We'd been together for nearly 8 years, married for 5, and I genuinely thought we had some kind of normal, stable life. She was my everything, my partner, my best friend, the person I trusted with everything. That's what made what I found so devastating. It started with little things, small signs that I ignored. She was more distant lately, distracted. When I'd ask about her day, she'd give me vague answers and avoid eye contact. But I was busy myself, caught up in work and the daily grind, so I shrugged it off. Until the night I was planning to propose. I'd been planning that moment for months. I'd saved up, picked her favorite restaurant, bought a ring that I thought she'd love. I wanted it to be perfect. I remember the night vividly. The sky was clear, stars shining just enough to make everything feel cinematic. I was nervous as hell, but also excited. I wanted her to know I was serious, that I was committed. She said yes, of course. We celebrated, kissed under the dim glow of the streetlights outside the restaurant. When we got home, I was already imagining our future kids, a house, the whole 9 yards. That's when I noticed something odd. Her phone kept buzzing. I saw the screen light up with a name I didn't recognize, Alex. She was asleep on the couch, but I couldn't help myself. I reached over and grabbed her phone. It was unlocked. I hesitated for a second, then swiped it open. There were messages, flirty, intimate, clearly more than just friendly banter. I felt my stomach turn cold. My hands shook as I scrolled through them. She was telling him things I never imagined she'd say to anyone, let alone someone she worked with. "Can't wait to see you tonight," one message read, the last one. "Tonight's the night I finally get you alone." My mind went blank. I looked at her sleeping figure, her chest rising and falling peacefully. How could she do this? I felt a mix of rage, pain, and confusion all swirling together. I wanted to wake her up, confront her right then, but I was too stunned. Instead, I quietly shut her phone and went to the bathroom. My palms were slick with sweat as I looked at myself in the mirror. I knew I needed to see more. I needed proof. So I started digging through her emails, her social media. Nothing explicit there yet, but I had a plan. I'd wait until she was asleep again, then search her messages more thoroughly. That's when I found a thread with a coworker, another woman. They were planning a secret meetup. She arranged it for that weekend, right around the time she'd said she was working late. Every nerve in my body was on fire. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just some slip-up. This was a carefully orchestrated affair. I didn't sleep the rest of that night, just sat there, trembling, staring at the phone. My heart pounded every time I thought about the betrayal, the lies. The next morning, I woke up with a plan. I needed to find out how deep this went. And I needed to decide what I was going to do, because I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without consequences. I had to be smart, precise, calculated. Whatever I did next, it had to hit her where it hurt. I looked at her as she slept, peaceful and unaware. Her face was so innocent, so serene. That's what made it all worse. I could feel my jaw tight. I clenched my fists, feeling that familiar flicker of hostility. I'd loved her so much, but now I saw her for what she really was. A liar, a cheat, a thief of my trust. I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. This was about me losing my sense of security, my faith in everything we built. I had to act, and I had to be ruthless. But first I needed to gather everything, all the evidence I could find. Once I had that, I'd decide my next move. As I sat there, my mind racing, I wondered how much of my life was built on false foundations, and how much longer could I pretend I didn't know, because I knew, I felt it in my bones, that this was only the beginning. After spending the night awake, staring at her sleeping face, I knew I couldn't just confront her outright without more proof. The anger simmered beneath my skin, but I had to stay sharp. I started planning my move carefully. I needed everything, concrete evidence, everything that would leave no doubt. If I was going to destroy her, her lies, her deception, I had to do it right. First, I had to find out how deep her affair went. I started going through her phone more thoroughly, but she was cautious, password protected, no recent messages, and she always kept her phone face down. That told me she was scared I'd find out and that she was covering her tracks. But I wasn't done. No way. I decided to check her email account next. She used it for work, personal stuff, and most importantly, her secret rendezvous. I had to find a way in. I remembered she had a habit of leaving her laptop open when she showered or went to the store. One afternoon, I waited until she was in the shower, then quickly grabbed her laptop. My fingers hesitated for a second before I typed in her password, something she'd told me once, a childhood nickname and her birth year. It worked. The floodgates opened. I sifted through a ton of spam, work emails, and, finally, her private messages. There were dozens of them, but one conversation stood out. A full dialogue with the coworker, an exchange of flirtatious texts, plans to meet, and even talk of fake excuses for being away. I printed out screenshots. My stomach clenched as I looked at the explicit messages, the promises, the secret time they'd spent together. Everything was laid bare. With all this evidence, I sat back and felt a cold satisfaction. My plan was clear now. I'd wait until she came home, then confront her with everything. I knew she'd deny it fiercely. But I had her own words, her own screenshots. There was no escaping the truth. That evening, as she walked in the door, I was already sitting in the living room, papers and her phone laid out before me. Her eyes widened and I saw the flicker of panic flash across her face. She stammered, "What's all this?" I didn't hesitate. "You tell me, care to explain these messages?" She looked at the screen, then at me, her face draining of color. "It's nothing, just some stupid flirtation." "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I spat, my voice cold. "Because I've got screenshots," her own words. "You planned to cheat on me." "Didn't you?" She broke down then, tears spilling over her cheeks. "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was confused. I love you. I swear I didn't want to hurt you." Her words only fueled my rage. I was done playing nice. I told her I knew everything and that I was sick of her lies. She begged, pleaded, and promised to end it, but I wasn't buying it. Not anymore. That night, I decided I needed to teach her a lesson, something that would make her realize what she'd lost. I had a plan. It was simple but effective. I'd make her see the damage she'd done, not just to me but to herself. She'd regret ever betraying the trust of the man who loved her. I spent the next few days preparing. I looked into every detail of her affair, her schedule, her plans, her weaknesses. I wanted to catch her completely off guard. I needed her vulnerable. I wanted her to understand that I wasn't just some naive fool she could manipulate. I was serious about ending this, about making her feel the weight of her betrayal. All the while, she kept trying to talk to me, to explain, to apologize, but I stayed silent. This wasn't about words anymore. It was about actions. I knew I had to act decisively to turn her world upside down and leave her no choice but to face the consequences. I found out she was planning a weekend trip with her coworker. Perfect. That's when I set my trap. I knew she'd be gone, vulnerable, and I was ready. I had everything lined up. The evidence, the plan, the resolve. It was time to show her exactly what her betrayal had set in motion. I just sat there one night, staring at all the photos, screenshots, and plans I'd gathered, feeling the cold fire of determination. She thought she could get away with it. She thought she could lie, cheat, and keep living her double life. But I was done waiting. I was done being the fool. And when I was ready, I'd make sure she knew it. The day she left for her weekend trip, I felt a strange mix of relief and anticipation. Relief because I knew I had all the pieces I needed, and anticipation because I was finally going to execute my plan. I wanted her to see what her lies had cost. I wanted her to understand that betrayal came with consequences. Before she left, I made sure everything was in place. I packed her bags with some of her clothes, her toiletries, and her favorite jewelry, things she'd need on her trip. But I also added a few extras: her phone, her keys, and a small USB drive. I'd already uploaded all the evidence there: screenshots, messages, emails. It was time to give her a taste of her own medicine. She looked at me as she handed me her keys, her eyes red and puffy from crying. "Please don't do anything stupid," she whispered, her voice trembling. I kept my face cold, unreadable. "Stupid is the last thing I'll do. You've done enough of that." I saw her flinch, but I didn't say more. Instead, I handed her the bags and she hurried out the door, leaving me alone with my plan. Once she was gone, I took a deep breath, feeling my stomach tighten with nerves. This was it. I connected the USB drive to the laptop, double-checked everything, and then set it on the dining table. I placed a note beside it. For the one who thought she could get away with everything. If you want the truth, it's all here. Then I sat back and watched the clock. I wanted her to find it. I wanted her to realize what she'd lost. Every minute felt like an eternity. My palms were slick, my heart pounding harder than ever. I kept replaying her tears, her promises, her lies. I thought about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd lied to my face for months, maybe years. Finally, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. I answered it and I heard her voice, hesitant, nervous. "I found your message," I said. "The one you sent to Alex. The one where you said tonight was the night you'd finally get him alone. Guess what? I have proof of everything now, and I've given you a chance to come clean." She went silent for a long moment, then whispered, "You're bluffing." "No, I'm not. You lied to my face, you betrayed me, and I've had enough. When you get back, I want to talk, but don't think this is over. This is only the beginning of what you've started." I hung up. Feeling the adrenaline rush through my veins, I was ready. I'd watched her betray me, and now it was my turn. The hours dragged by. I cleaned the apartment slowly, rechecking everything, making sure there was no mistake. When I heard her keys in the door, my stomach clenched again. I took my seat in the living room, eyes fixed on the door, waiting for her to walk in. She entered, eyes red, shoulders slumped. Her voice was hoarse. "You're serious? All this? How did you?" I cut her off. "Don't pretend you don't know. I've seen enough. You've been lying, cheating, and you think you can just come back and everything's fine. Well, it's not anymore." She looked at the USB drive on the table, her face draining of color. What are you going to do with that?" "I'm going to expose you to everyone, your friends, your family, your boss. You'll see what betrayal really costs." My voice was firm, but there was a sharp edge underneath. Her hands trembled. "Please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to get this far." "I love you, love. You don't love me," I snapped. "You just love the idea of someone better, someone exciting. Now I'm done. You want to keep lying, fine, but I won't be your fool anymore." She sank to her knees, crying, "Please don't do this. I was stupid. I'll fix it. I swear I will." I stepped back, feeling the finality in my bones. "It's too late for that. You made your choice. Now it's my turn to make mine." I reached down, grabbed the keys I'd left on the table, and handed them to her. "Here. Take your things and don't come back. I want nothing from you anymore." She looked up at me, eyes glossy with tears. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere I can breathe again, somewhere I can forget this nightmare." I paused, then added, "And don't bother calling me. I don't want to hear your voice ever again." As she gathered her belongings, I felt a strange sense of calm. It wasn't relief exactly, more like clarity. I knew I'd done the right thing. Betrayal cuts deep, but sometimes you have to cut it out entirely. I took the USB drive and put it in an envelope, along with a note, "This is your reminder of what you threw away." Then I handed over the keys, watching her leave without another word. Standing there, I realized something clear. Betrayal isn't just about infidelity. It's about losing trust, respect, and the foundation of what you thought you had. And sometimes, the only way to reclaim yourself is to walk away and burn the bridge behind you. The house felt strangely empty after she left. Her absence hit me like a punch to the gut, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of relief. That chapter was finally closed. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. Still, I knew I couldn't just move on without some sort of fallout. She'd try to claw her way back, or worse, retaliate. I spent the next day cleaning up the apartment, removing her clothes, her stuff, everything that reminded me of her. It was a symbolic act, a way of erasing what had become a toxic chapter of my life. Every button I unfastened, every piece I packed away, felt like I was peeling back the layers of betrayal. I wanted this done completely, but I knew her. I knew she'd fight back quietly, maybe even desperately. I also knew the risk of her trying to hurt me with rumors or guilt trips. That's why I carefully thought through my next move. I had to make her see that I wasn't just going to walk away quietly. I was going to make her regret every lie, every minute she spent betraying my trust. That evening, I sat in front of my laptop again, reviewing everything I'd gathered. I'd saved all her messages, screenshots, emails, everything. I needed a plan that sealed her fate, one that made her realize she'd crossed a line she couldn't uncross. I wasn't just going to let her slip away with her secrets. No, I wanted her to pay, in a way she couldn't brush off. I started drafting what I'd call the final act. I wanted her to understand that her betrayal was not just a betrayal of me, but of herself. I crafted a detailed email addressed to her boss, her friends, her family, anyone who needed to know what kind of person she was. I cleaned it up, made sure every word hit home, then attached the most convincing evidence. I felt a shiver down my spine as I pressed send. This wasn't just revenge. It was about justice, about reclaiming my dignity. I knew she'd be furious when she found out. I had to be prepared for her reaction. Denial, anger, maybe even attempts to guilt me into silence, but I was done with her manipulations. The next morning I got a reply. Her boss called me furious, demanding to know what this was about. I told him everything about the messages, the plans, her duplicity. I heard him gasp, then curse. I had no idea she was capable of this. I'll handle it. That's all I needed, confirmation that I'd done the right thing. I also reached out to a few friends, people she'd confided in, people who might have been part of her secret life. I didn't want to destroy her completely, but I wanted her to face the reality of her actions. The truth was chaos, but chaos often brought clarity. Within hours, her world started unraveling. She tried calling me, begging, crying. I didn't answer. The more she pushed, the more I realized that I had put the wheels in motion for her downfall. It was a calculated, cold decision. I wasn't going to be her pawn anymore. That night I sat in my living room, feeling a mix of exhaustion and clarity. I'd done everything I could to expose her, to sever her influence from my life. Now, it was her turn to deal with the consequences. I looked at the USB drive I still had, the one I'd handed her as a parting gift. That little piece of evidence had done more damage than I ever could have imagined. It was time to let go. I reached for my phone and blocked her number, then deleted her from all my social media accounts. No more contact, no more lies, just a clean break. Standing up, I looked around the room, feeling the weight lift from my shoulders. I'd faced betrayal head-on, and I'd come out the other side. I knew there would be pain, but I also knew I'd survive it. And one thing was clear. I was finally reclaiming my life piece by piece. Sometimes betrayal teaches us what truly matters, our own strength, our resilience, and the importance of walking away before we get completely broken. And I was ready to move on without her, without the lies, without the betrayal, because I deserved better. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotion and reflection. After throwing her out, exposing her lies, and severing any ties, I felt a strange calm settle over me, like I'd finally taken control of my life again. But beneath that calm, there was an undercurrent of anger, not just at her, but at myself for allowing this betrayal to fester so long. Still, I knew I couldn't dwell on the past. I had to focus on moving forward. I kept busy, throwing myself into work, trying to drown out the ache of loneliness. But it was impossible to ignore the emptiness she left behind, the silence where her voice used to be. I kept replaying all her lies, wondering how I'd missed the signs, how I'd let myself become blind to her deception. I also started thinking about what I'd do differently next time. If I was going to recover, I had to learn from this. One afternoon, I was at the grocery store standing in line when my phone buzzed. I hesitated, then looked at the screen. It was an unknown number. Usually I'd ignore, but something made me answer. "Hey." A familiar voice said softly. It was her. I froze, my heart hammered in my chest. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice flat. "Please," she whispered, "don't shut me out completely. I know I messed up, but I still love you. I want to talk. Can we meet?" I clenched my jaw, feeling the old familiar anger ignite. "You lost that privilege. Don't call me again." There was silence, then her voice cracked. "Just think about it. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I want to explain. Maybe we can find some way back." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "There's no way back for us, not after what you did. Don't contact me again, ever." I ended the call and pocketed the phone, feeling the familiar sting of betrayal burn anew in my chest. That night I sat alone in my apartment, staring at the ceiling. I realized I was at a crossroads. Part of me still wanted to believe that she could change, that maybe this was just a temporary lapse. But deep down, I knew it was over. Trust was shattered beyond repair. Needed closure, something I hadn't had before. So I decided I'd confront her one last time. Not to rekindle anything, but to make her understand that I knew exactly what she was. I wanted her to hear it from me loud and clear. The next day I waited outside her workplace. I saw her walk out, surprised to see me. Her face was pale, eyes wide. I walked straight up to her, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "You thought you could fool me forever," I said, voice low but firm. "I know everything now, the emails, the messages, your plans, and I want you to understand this is the end." She looked at me, trembling. "Please don't do this. I'm sorry, I really am." "You're sorry?" I scoffed. "Sorry doesn't cut it. Sorry doesn't erase what you did. Sorry doesn't fix the damage you caused." I paused, then added, "You ruined everything, and I'm done pretending this is just a mistake. No more lies, no more excuses." Her face crumpled. "I love you. I want us to fix this." I shook my head. "No, you don't. No one who betrays like that can fix what they've broken. I'm giving you one last chance to be honest, really honest, or walk away and never look back." She looked at me, tears streaming down her face. "I'll leave, I swear, just don't end it like this." I looked at her, cold and resolute. "Goodbye, that's all you get from me now." I turned and walked away, feeling the last of her presence fade behind me. It was harsh but necessary. I couldn't let her poison my mind anymore. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was finally severing the ties that kept me tethered to her lies. That moment, finally letting go, was the start of healing. I knew I'd be okay. I'd faced the worst and I was still standing. The pain would fade, but the lesson would stay. Trust is fragile and betrayal leaves scars. But sometimes, walking away is the bravest thing you can do. The days after that last confrontation were some of the hardest I've ever lived through. I felt like a shadow of myself, drained, hollow, yet strangely lighter in a way I hadn't expected. The weight of her betrayal was still there, but I also felt a strange sense of relief, like I'd finally taken back control. The house was quieter, emptier, but also freer. I spent most of my time tidying up the apartment, removing every trace of her, her clothes, her perfumes, the little things she'd left behind. It was a slow process, but each item I packed away felt like I was reclaiming a part of myself I'd lost. I realized I'd been holding on to her, to the idea of us, for too long. Now I was finally letting go. I also made a conscious decision to focus on myself. I started going to the gym, reconnecting with old friends, and even talking to a counselor. I needed to rebuild my confidence piece by piece. The betrayal was a wound, yes, but it was also a catalyst. It made me see what I deserved: honesty, respect, and someone who genuinely cared for me, not someone who lied and cheated behind my back. One evening I went for a walk in the park. The air was cool, the sky painted with streaks of orange and pink. I felt the breeze on my face, and for a moment I let myself breathe. I thought about all the pain, the anger, the humiliation. But I also thought about the future, how I was finally free to start over without her shadow looming over me. As I sat on a bench, my phone buzzed again. I hesitated, then looked at it. It was a message from a new number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. It was a simple message. "You're stronger than you think. Keep moving forward." I smiled softly at that. It was a small gesture, but it meant a lot. It reminded me that even after betrayal, life goes on. I'd endured, I'd survived, and now I was ready to rebuild. I knew I'd carry the scars, but they didn't define me anymore. That night, I sat in my apartment, feeling a sense of peace I hadn't felt in a long time. I took out the USB drive she left behind, the one I'd kept as a reminder, and I finally decided to destroy it. I held it in my hand, thinking about all the pain it represented, and then I smashed it against the wall, watching the pieces scatter. It was symbolic. I was letting go of her lies, her betrayal, her secrets. I was finally free from the past. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to myself, "It's over." In that moment, I understood something crucial. Betrayal is a wound, sometimes deep, sometimes slow to heal. But healing comes when you face the pain head-on, when you refuse to be a victim anymore. I might never forget what happened, but I could choose to move on, stronger, wiser. And I did. From that day forward, I knew I'd be okay. The betrayal taught me what I truly deserve, and it pushed me to become someone who wouldn't settle for less. I walked away from the chaos, but I stepped into a future that was mine. And for the first time in a long while, I felt genuinely free.